Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. I'm so excited for this one. Please, everybody, welcome to the show, my friend Dusti Arab.
Why, hello, Angie.
And she's got the red lip color. Like, you match my hair with the lip color almost. It's fantastic.
Your hair always is fascinating. I'm obsessed with your hair. It always looks so good.
Thank you. I was to tell my stylist, the last time I got a little bit bored and I went in and I said, I'm ready for something new. Like, here's my inspiration pick. Surprise me. She's the one that came up with purple and red hair. Of course, everybody that's listening can't see me like petting my hair right now, but it's fabulous. Anyways, fabulous lips, fabulous hair, fabulous business. Tell us all about it.
Absolutely. So I run the Reinvention Co. We are a small marketing consultancy. I work primarily with personality-driven based businesses here in the online space. So that's a lot of authors and people with small teams, things like that. So usually someone brings somebody like me in if they just got their book sold to a big publisher and they're like, hey, I know that Penguin Random House has a little tiny suck-ass marketing department that isn't going to do anything for me. So I'm going to hire somebody who does know what they're doing to help me build out everything I need around the book so I can actually make money and sell as many books as possible when it does launch.
Oh, that's so important these days. I remember when I wrote my book last year, I was thinking so much about, do I want to go the traditional route? Do I want to go the self-published route? Each one of these has its pros and cons. But then when I looked at it at the end of the day, the big major con to the traditional publishing route is that most of them are like, so how many followers do you have? What size audience are you bringing to this? And I'm like, if all you're doing for marketing is counting on my audience, then I ought to do the damn thing my fucking self. Like,
You know, and that is like, I totally understand why people do both. And I've self-published books before too. I've seen both sides of it for sure. And the truth is, no matter which route you do, you're going to be doing all of the marketing yourself, at least at like the high levels. Like I know somebody right now who got a massive deal and is like primed, probably going to have a New York Times bestseller. And they have had to invest so much time and so much money in order to make those things happen. Like, really, the only thing the publishing company has been able to do for them is give them a handful of contacts and additional people to potentially consider asking for like a quote for the book.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's one of those things where I get a little bit bullish and stubborn and be like, I can do that myself. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I will be keeping all of the royalties for my efforts. I appreciate you.
Hey.
Well, and it's funny, like I have this like stack of notes, of course, that I keep while I'm asking people. And the one thing that I wrote down from, I have this intake form for everybody that books a recording spot. I said, tell me about a setback in your business. And you wrote, which time, LMAO? I was like, I know we have to talk about that.
Oh, man. Well, I think it's just so important for people to be honest about the fact that entrepreneurship is not a straight fucking line. It just isn't.
Absolutely.
And for me, like, I do not come from a traditional background, like, at all. I'm from the wrong side of the tracks. My mom is still a bartender. Like, my kids have different dads. Like, I mean, by all accounts, I should not be where I am at today. And even once I did enter the entrepreneurship space, it was a lot of stop and go for a long time because it was just so different than anything I'd ever experienced. I was working at a Starbucks when I started my first blog, and that was in 2010. I was like in the middle of college, and I had just found like the internet, sort of. Like, I'd had a live journal like when I was in high school and things like that. And I really liked that format of like writing. And I remember at the time, even my friends would ask me, they're like, who are you writing that for? Like, because they were all kind of writing to communicate with each other. And that was not how I was using it. Like, I was using it the exact same way that, I use Facebook now. Like, I'm using it to like talk to people and tell stories and like sort through all the nonsense that's in my head 24/7. But when I first started this blog, it was very different. And it had like, it was like peak blogger days. And I didn't really know that at the time. But when I was reading some other people's stuff, they're like, yeah, you should do this. Like, this is a good idea. And I was like, okay, fuck it. I'll do it. And I took Leah Babauta's like $100 blogging class, and I had my first like viral post 2 weeks later. So I was pretty good at it. I was 22. So I went from like 0 to 20,000 subscribers basically overnight. And that was terrifying, let me tell you. And I was like a mouthy shithead of a 22-year-old too. Like, I mean, aren't we all?
Yeah, I was like, I'm nodding because hard same. Absolutely. Now I tell 22-year-olds, I remember when I knew everything. Oh, yes.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I think I was blogging like that for like 6 months. And really what happened for me was I realized that maybe I wasn't the misfit that I'd grown up thinking I was. Like, I'd grown up in this like sleeper suburb community, and it was kind of shitty. And I always just stuck out like a sore thumb, like my whole life. And so when I discovered this other weird little enclave of people on the internet, it was so exciting. It was so exciting. And I remember I was talking with Ash Amberge like 6 months after I'd started this. And I was like, okay, so like, how do I make money? And she looked at me and she was like, dude, you should be a copywriter. You're a great writer. And I was like, what the fuck is a copywriter? So I went and Googled it, and then I stuck out my shingle and I started copywriting for $12 an hour for somebody I would find out like a year later was a 19-year-old stripper in Texas. And that chick paid my rent for like 6 months.
Nice. Nice.
Everybody gets started somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I think every copywriter I know, which, by the way, for anybody who's new to the show or new to marketing, copywriters are people that basically specialize in advertising and sales writing. Dusty and I both have a very long background as copywriters before we went on to become other things like podcast hosts, right? Both of us have a show. Every copywriter I know has fallen into it.
And that's kind of how it works. Like, you want to make money writing. And like, originally, like, I really liked that memoir style, like that kind of posting, but I couldn't see like a clear way to make that an audience. And like, it was also new for me. I'm like, I know how to exchange a service for money. And that made sense to me at the time. And so like, again, it wasn't a straight line there. So I started copywriting. Eventually I picked up other skills in marketing, and eventually, like, these days I'm operating at like a fractional CMO is what I call myself, but I'm like a jack of all trades marketing person who can come in and run your team and hire and, and manage the whole damn thing, so that you don't have to worry so hard about making the internet print money for you every time you need to. Like, you need a thought leader, and you need a thought partner in that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I'm curious, this is kind of going back to what you talked about when you said, I'm from the wrong side of the tracks. I don't have this traditional backgrounds, right? Did you ever have any hesitation in starting your own business, or like an instinct to hide who you were? Or did you always embrace that?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think I could hide who I am if I wanted to. I'm very mouthy. But I did experience a lot of culture shock. There was one situation in particular where I figured out, like, within like that first year, like, if I volunteered for events, I got to go, even though there was no way I could pay for them at the time. So I got to go to the very first World Domination Summit that Chris Guillebeau hosted here in Portland. And because I knew a guy on the planning committee, and all those people are still here and they're all still friends. And it was such a great opportunity for me to meet so many people who I still know today. And that particular conference, like 6 weeks later, there was another one happening here in Portland. And so I also had the benefit of like being in like a little hotspot for that particular niche. And at this other event, I met this woman who we just hit it right off. She was so cool and so funny. And we were, talking about feminism and the way that we see, it changing the way we interact on the internet and the way that movements are made and all of that. And then at dinner, I heard some people, like, her name was Justine. I didn't think anything about it. I'd never heard of her before. I didn't know who she was. But at dinner that night, everybody at the table was talking about her and everyone was gossiping about her. And I was so confused until I went home and Googled her because her name is Justine Musk. And she was just profiled in Glamour magazine for her divorce with Elon. And that was kind of where I started being like, oh, we are not the same. And like, and not in a bad way. Like we continued that friendship for a long time. Like as long as she stayed in the space, we were still hanging out and all of that. But yeah, I remember being pregnant with my son, Tristan. This was in like 2012. And I was in LA for Blog World. I had gone with like $25 in my bank account. I had like, the only reason I went was because the ticket there was so cheap. But I was 95% sure I could pick up a client if I went down there and saw people in person. And I was right. I actually left with 3 clients because that's what I do at live events like that. And one of the things I was going to do down there was go have breakfast with Justine. And we did. And then she drove me to like a train station afterwards because I was flying out of Long Beach. And we were waiting for the valet, which I had never done before. That was culture shock enough. Then when we got in the car, we were sitting there and she's looking for stuff. And she's like, I'm sorry, this isn't actually my car. I never drive this thing. And I was like, oh yeah, it must be for one of the boys. She's like, yeah. Because the kids all have their own nanny and their own car. And like, oh no, this like, it
Wow.
just like thinking about it was just nuts to me at the time. And like, and that culture shock has definitely colored the way that I've engaged in online spaces. I know that I have made so many social faux pas, like, and now, like, I mean, I'm 36 and it really took me probably that first 10 years in business to kind of learn how to navigate that space and like, you know, learn how to deal with triggers and stuff in that particular context. Because like for me, capitalism and entrepreneurship, like all this stuff, like it's the only way out in America. Like I do not see another way unless you come from a privileged background. Yep. So there was never any question for me that I was going to be in this space, but it took a lot for me to learn how to pass and be able to engage in the space.
Oh, yes. It's interesting that you mentioned passing, because I feel like I had a similar culture shock, although I think I hit it fairly well for a while. What happened to me was the opposite. And I've told this story on the podcast before, but like I was always very buttoned down. I would be snarky in like online forum posts every once in a while, but I really held back my personality until I went to an event. And similar thing, like I would do whatever it took to get to an event because I had an instinct that my magic was in person. And it turns out that's right. Like I don't do well cold calling, cold pitching. I've tried every single tactic out there under the sun. Nothing works better for me than being in the room with people that I get to meet and like, hey, tell me what you're working on. Oh, cool. Have you ever tried about that? Like, that's how the relationships develop. Anyway, I'm at this bar, have a couple of drinks, get a little bit of a buzz going. I still don't know how I told it, how this came about. I wound up telling a story about getting into a mosh pit fight and literally watch people lean in and go, wait, what? Who is this Angie? And that was when I started to kind of like come out of the shell, so to speak, really just embrace who I was. And then you mentioned, you know, this culture shock. Same thing. I'm the eldest of 3 kids. My mom was a single mom and my parents were both truck drivers. So like we didn't grow up having much. I've had several of those experiences over the course of building my business where somebody invites me into a room and I have to stop myself from saying like, holy fuck, I had no idea stuff like this existed. But I take a deep breath. I go, wow, I soak it all in. And then I go back and journal about how I'm manifesting this shit for myself. Because now, like, I used to take it as kind of like personally offensive that other people had stuff that I wanted, right? That was unevolved Angie. And now I can see it for what it is, perception expansion, showing me what other possibilities are out there for me to explore. And hey, maybe I can figure out a way to get there or a different path. Who knows?
Oh God, I love that so much. And that's always like, that's really how I felt about it too. Like for me, I've never really, I don't know. I won't say that I've never been like a jealous person, but usually like I've always seen that like when I got that feeling, it was because I wanted something. And that was always so clarifying. And then like when I started to get into personal development work, having like the research support that, I was like, oh, like other people already know this stuff. And like one of the people for me actually in the space that really shifted things for me in that regard was Tanya Lee. She's a life coach and her brand is called French Kiss Life. And it's very like, I mean, she's blonde and pretty and a little frou-frou, but she is just the nicest, kindest person. And it's because she grew up in a fucking trailer park in the South and like then became like a cardiac nurse before she was a life coach. So she had all of this like background before like she started changing things and stepping into this. Even the way she spoke like changed drastically. And I found that so inspiring. And it ended up like I was on the end of like a really bad breakup in 2015. And well, I got divorced in 2015, rebounded with a dude for a year. And then like it just, total fuckboy, blew up at the end. And so I was flying out to LA to see a friend who was just, I was like, I need to just get away for a while. And she was like, guess what? We're going to fucking Disneyland, Dusty. And it was my first time in Disneyland. So I knew you would like that. Yeah. So good friend takes me to Disneyland. But while I'm in the airport, I'm like, every time I'm in the airport, I always end up buying more plane tickets because I'm just like, oh, I love being here. I love being here. I love going places. And I found cheap ass tickets to Paris and I fucking impulse bought them on the spot. Nice. And I ended up getting to go and see Tanya there a couple months later. And she was like, I know that this, like, some of this is like, oh, a lot. Like, you're killing it. But I know that this is like, I know what it's like to go through that kind of a transition. And so she took me to the Hemingway bar at the Ritz. And we like went and like drank champagne at the counter there. And we went out to this incredible restaurant. She introduced me to other people in the area. And it was really that experience, I think, more than anything else that I was like, oh, like, this is like, I don't not belong here. And like, that was really a big transition point there for me.
I love that distinction that I don't not belong here. It's not quite the same as I belong here, but it's also not the definitive I don't belong here. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense, but that made perfect sense to me when you said it.
Yeah. It's like the body positivity movement. Like it's like you're going for neutrality first because that's what's accessible. It's like, I don't hate the body I'm in. Like, I feel okay in this body, in this moment. I don't have to love it all the time. I don't have to like, maybe I'm not ready to love myself yet. But if I can get to that point, I can see where maybe I can someday.
Oh, yes. How many of us have like failed or given up or deemed ourselves failures because we couldn't flip things on and off like a light switch? I mean, I say this I like chuckling with all the love I have to me and to everybody that's listening too. Like, we have these ginormous expectations of ourselves to do these massive personality overhauls overnight, eliminate habits, replace them with better habits. And like, if I don't wake up in the morning having lost 50 pounds, suddenly I'm a failure. What?
Right.
Oh, and I love you telling that story about Tanya, like knowing other people who have made that journey and that transition. One of my big icons for dealing with my own money issues, and right, anybody who's new to business or in the early stages, nobody tells you how much of this is personal development and just coming face to face with your own bullshit.
Literally all of it is personal development.
Yep. Coming face to face with my own money issues and this belief that money was evil, like people that had money were bad, that kept me stuck for a long time. I started to fixate on who do I know, who is out there in the world that has money and does good, much like you said with this coach, Tanya. Like, this is a kind person. This is the person that is the same backstage as they are front stage, right? And they have money and they do good in the world. Dolly Parton, y'all. I say our Lord and Savior Dolly Parton all the time to anybody who will listen, and do not besmirch her name in front of me. Woe be unto you if you do that. But like, look at this. She doesn't give a shit what you think about her. She does her own style, her own damn way, does not care what you think. She's out there giving bajillions of dollars to causes that she cares about. And she's kind to everybody. I've seen so many videos of her like holding hands with people, singing along with people. Like, So that's my model
Right.
now. Like, I'm going to be so filthy fucking rich that I can be just like my idol, Dolly Parton.
That is the best life goal maybe ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like you can't go wrong with that. Like her nonprofit that distributes books to children under 5. I was just reading a stat about it, and as of right now, 1 in 5 kids in the United States get books from Dolly Parton.
Oh, that's so incredible. That's so amazing. And I love that foundation. I can't remember. She wrote the sweetest little thing on her website when she explains what that charity is for. But the part that I do remember was that her father grew up illiterate and she just wanted to show him that like reading is great and she wanted to pay tribute to him. And it was just this beautiful reason why she wanted to get books into the hands of as many kids as possible. And it doesn't matter who you come from or what your background is. Kids 0 to 5 get books every month from Dolly Parton. Period. The end.
The best.
The best. All right. So we talked a little bit about falling into copywriting, how you stumbled into this world with all these big celebrities, which is really cool. How did you get from copy to reinvention company?
Well, originally when I started writing copy, like I had started with about pages because nobody likes writing about themselves. Like it sucks. There's nothing that is more confronting immediately than having to go write a 150-word bio about yourself, let alone a fucking about page. And especially if you're not super established, so you haven't had it done before. So it just brings up all of your shit. And so initially when I was doing that, like every time I would get on the phone with somebody, they'd end up in tears. And I was like, I was in my early 20s and I was like, I don't know how to hold space for this. but
You're
it was
supposed to be
very like,
recording right now. I don't know.
right? Oh my God. And it was very, I was like, okay, so this has like a little bit of a therapy thing going on here, which like I had just discovered therapy myself. I was like, okay, so I can at least see what's going on here. But what would end up happening is like I'd end up doing these pages for people on their websites, or I'd do some blogs or whatever. And they'd be like, oh God, it would just be so great if you could just like put it where it goes. And I thought about it and I was like, I mean, I did that for my website. So in theory, at least I could probably do it for yours. Do you want to pay me more money? And they did. So I went and I learned basic web design, and I learned, well, and realistically, I'd been learning basic web design even in high school. Like, remember the Angel Fire days? God, I used to do that shit for fun all the time. Like I built so many websites on there and all about my different like weird little niche things that I was into all the time. Like textbook, undiagnosed ADHD right there. Like that was what I did for fun. It was like I info dumped on all these microsites, like good grief. If I would have known what a wiki was back in the day, oh shit, I would have lost my fucking mind. But so it started there and just like wanting to be able to do more for the people who were already paying me. And so it was like there. And at some point, like I remember I was having trouble getting enough copywriting work. Like it just, I felt like I had expanded as far in my little niche as I could, given like what I had going on in my life. And I ended up in like picking up some like OBM type work. So if you're not in the industry, online business managers, they basically run everything behind the scenes. And because I had a marketing brain, I was really good at it. So I could just step into that like right-hand woman role right away. And I was pretty comfortable there. And at some point, like I realized all of these people want all of the same things. I'm seeing these patterns everywhere. So in 2016, I started my first agency. And it started as just me and my friend who was in operations. And she was coming from a corporate background. And I was like, girl, I have these like 12 people who are willing to pay me like thousands of dollars a month, but I cannot keep all of them. Like I cannot keep track of all of this. I need systems. I need somebody else to be my fucking brain. Like I need somebody else to do for me what I'm doing for all of them, basically. And so we did that. And I made so many mistakes. Good God. My God love my friend. She like, we are still friends. It took me forever to pay her off after that agency failed, because it did. Like we made it a couple of years and I couldn't keep up with it. And there were other factors at play there too. Like part of why I had so many clients was because they were all from the same MLM.
Mm,
And during the election year, when I came out as like pro Hillary, all of a sudden I had a lot of clients drop off.
mm,
All but one. All but one. And
ugh.
that was the beginning of the end there. So I had to let lots of people go. And I always try to, like, even when I was dating, I have a policy of leaving things better than I found them. So for clients that I couldn't continue to take care of, if I had a copywriter or a designer who I thought they could use, I just farmed everybody out basically, and kind of started over. Like that was end of 2016, that was a rough year for me, like between the breakup and, finally getting in some traveling and all of
Mm,
that. Like it was just such a big expansion year for me in so many ways that like I just needed to create some space there, honestly.
mm-hmm. Oh man. Yeah, it sounds like such an upheaval year. And this is the thing that's coming to me, and tell me if it's accurate for you. The thing that pops into my mind is like all the opportunity that comes in upheaval. When everything falls to shit, there's usually some nugget of gold that's buried among all the shit that you usually have to dig for, and you don't want to dig because it's been a shitty year. Okay, I don't want to do anymore. But there's something there that can be rebuilt into something even better if we have the courage and the bravery to see the opportunity instead of like, I'm shit, this is shit, I'm a failure, woe is me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it was like I knew that year was going to be a lot of it. So I said yes to lots of things that I wouldn't have otherwise. Like, I went to Paris for 10 days by myself. Like I did meet up with some folks there that I knew, but like I remember at the time people being like, "You're so brave." I'm like, "I'm going to a major city." I'm like, "I don't feel like it's that brave." Like it's not that big a deal. Don't read into it too much. But it was life changing. It really, really was. And it was such an incredible growth experience. And it helped lay the way for everything else that, kind of came after that. So I floated in and out of some like more traditional employment for a minute there. Really, like I met my partner, now husband, that next summer in 2017 there. And like between then and like COVID, um, I bounced around with traditional employment in addition to my freelancing and still doing a lot of what I was doing online. And that was really the right call for me. I wanted to get some more traditional experience. And as traditional as being a VP of marketing at a cannabis company can be. But I got to spend other people's money to hire and get good at hiring and for running these larger projects. And so I just got to play in a bunch of different arenas that I didn't get to previously. And I'm so glad that I did, because when I did come back in 2020, I think I had a full client load within a week of lockdown.
Oh,
Like it
wow.
took no time for me to just step back into it. And yeah, and that just kind of kicked off everything else.
I love that. And there's a couple things that like I've been taking furious notes this entire time. There are a couple things that I want to highlight. One, take opportunities, right? And I actually read a post in a copywriter group just earlier today where somebody said one of the things that I did that held myself back for such a long time without me realizing it was I was so deathly paranoid of somebody trying to take advantage of me and giving away free work that I closed off my mind to any potential opportunities. And going all the way back to when you talked about volunteering for some of these conferences and going to things, putting yourself out there, right? That's not somebody taking advantage of you because you volunteered for free. That's you doing what you have to do to get your foot in the door and serve yourself from that buffet, right? There's that big heaping table full of all the good stuff. I'm going to get in there and get some, right? So I love that. I also love that you talk about making mistakes, like, and going in house, because those are some recurring themes over the course of the show of like, well, what if I fuck up? What if I try this big thing and it fails? Welcome to entrepreneurship. You're going to try big things. You're going to try little things. They're going to fail and you're going to bounce back. And it's okay. We're a little bit rubber. It's okay. Going in house is also okay. It doesn't make you any less of an entrepreneur that you took a job and you fed your family and you kept a roof over your head and you did what you needed to do. I actually think it's a super smart way to get good, especially if you're pivoting. Like, I need a new skill set. I'm going to go get somebody to pay me to get good at this thing. That's how
God,
I got
it's
good at
true.
copywriting.
I don't know why more people don't do that. Like
Mhm.
that, God, I actually remember seeing a panel during that first year at World Domination Summit. And I mean, and I was still really young. So like I felt like I still was in that phase where like I knew people who were doing internships and apprenticeships and all that stuff too. So like I get when people are who are more established and are like at a certain age, like don't want to do that stuff as much or it's not as appealing. I completely understand that. However, I was right in the middle of that. And I remember it was a panel and it was Jonathan Fields and Pam Slim and I think somebody else. And I remember somebody in the audience just asked some asshat fucking question because this was peak, Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week. It's like,
Mm.
how can I get people to pay me to do X, Y, and Z? And Pam says, go get a job. And
Mhm.
just like in that voice, in that tone. And her and Jonathan were just like, seriously, just go get a fucking job. Like, it's not
Mhm.
that big of a deal. And then
Yeah.
you'll have the answers you're looking for, plus experience. Like,
Mhm.
obviously, like, there's nothing wrong with letting people pay you in whatever capacity that looks like.
Oh, yes. And especially for creatives, like creatives who are trying to do business and you're trying to sell your services to other business owners. Nothing is going to clarify this more than actually working for somebody and understanding how what you do fits into their business. I've worked with graphic designers, photographers, especially copywriters who think it's all about the stuff. It's all about the words. It's all about the story. It's all about the photos. No, it's not. That is a piece of the overall puzzle. And until you wrap your head around how that fits into somebody else's business, you're constantly going to be wondering why this is so hard. So going in house and seeing how you fit into the overall puzzle and like what you can do to amplify things, what you do that might topple things, right? It's going to give you
Mm-hmm.
such saleable experience. Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, that's actually so the way that I've structured my services these days is almost like that. Like it really is like I am not a full-time person you can bring in, but I'm so fast that you don't really need a full-time person most of the time for these smaller, well, and when I say small, most of the companies I work for are between like 2 and 10 million. So
Mm.
that's like where it makes sense to have like a fractional CMO. And when I come in here, I'm like, part of what I do for people is like, if we're working together at this level, then I want my hands dirty. Like I want to
Mhm.
be in the muck. Like I don't want to feel like a hands-off consultant. Like, I mean, and sometimes that has value, like where you have somebody who's an outside voice and like, and I'll come in and do that for like a VIP day or something. But where I feel like I'm the most effective is when I can integrate with a team, cut the fat, hire new folks, and really create these cohesive marketing teams and campaigns. So in some cases, I will work myself out of a job and that's great. Like, I mean, that means that I've gotten the company to a level that they do need somebody who's full-time and in-house, which is incredible. And I love being able to operate in that role. But I really like these leaner, smaller teams like that because they are free. Like, there's more flexibility. We get to move faster and you get to know people. And that really is important to me, even in a fully remote role like this.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's fabulous too. And it ties back into another point that I wanted to make that you said was brilliant. Like, how do I get people to pay me? How do I do more for these people that are already paying me? And this seems perfect. Like you used that experience to get you to a piece that you love, help them grow, help them get the right people in place, and then peace out. My job is done. Right? I've
Mhm.
met so many people on the entrepreneur thing. Like, how do I get in with these people for like ever? And I'm like, I'm with the crowd that's like a little bit ADHD, a lot ADHD. I don't want to be here forever. I want to get you to good enough. And then, hey, like if we continue working together throughout the years on different projects, absolutely. Like I need to keep the spark
Right.
fresh. That's what makes my magic work. Yeah.
It's true. And especially in marketing, like for anything marketing, like tangent, like you need that. Like you need fresh blood. You need to have fresh perspectives and stuff. Like so I have one client who I've been with their team for like a year and a half. And I knew from the moment I signed on that was probably like an 18-month to 3-year contract. And I'm already seeing now where like either this author is going to need to write and sell another book here, or in another 6 months, it may not make sense for me to stay on with the current model because we've already optimized everything we can optimize. They're not launching new products. So like, unless there is some kind of an activation point, I don't need to be there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it wouldn't be like me leaving because something's gone wrong or whatever, but I just have no interest in working on the same boring ass thing over and over and over again. And I love their programs. I've taken their programs. Like, it's so good. It's such good content, but I've already done it. So like, I'm looking for something, like I want that spark too for me. Like, I want to be able to fall in love with your business and your project. And that does, that means we gotta like move it along once in a while.
Thank you for saying that, and for saying that in such a just uniquely Dusty way, because I think that there's a lot of fear around relationships ending and that it always has to be a bad thing. Why can't it be a graduation instead of like, oh shit, now we can't work together and I need to get another client, right? It doesn't always have to be this bad thing when a relationship ends. Sometimes it just ends because you both got what you wanted out of it. I actually remember I hired a life coach. Hi, Brian, if you're listening to this, and worked with him for about 2.5 years. And I remember on our last call, we were getting to the end of I think he did like 3 or 6 month packages. We were on one of the very last calls and he gets on, he goes, so what do you want to work on today? And I was like, I don't really have anything. And he goes, nothing came up for you this week? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I had a couple of things, but I had the tools and I did this and I did that. And like, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty proud of myself. So like we chit chatted for a little bit when we got to the end of the call and we started talking about, does it make sense for us to renew? And I was like, at the risk of sounding kind of assholey, I think I got what I needed. Like, I think I'm really feeling good. I feel strong. Just evidenced by this call, the fact that I didn't really have anything to talk about. I was able to handle all the emotional meltdowns myself and come out better for it. So like, thank you. I feel like I've graduated coaching.
And that's incredible. Like, and it doesn't mean you won't go back in the future or that you won't work with another coach in the future or on something specific, but that's exactly how I feel about it too. And like, I mean, for being someone who's a marketer and has been in this weird little corner of the internet for like a long time at this point, like I am a hard sell. I hardly buy anything from anybody. And if I do buy something, it's because I've been watching you for years and I've vetted you with like multiple of your clients. Like it's ridiculous, honestly, for like the level of purchase that I'll still do this with. But like, that's the kind of buyer I am.
It's so funny that you say that. I'm actually honestly the opposite buyer. And you actually experienced this last year when you and our friend Hillary decided to throw this collaboration cruise. And I had always wanted to go on a Virgin cruise. And y'all basically said like, hey, come have fun with us. We'll work on your business. And I was like, that's it. I'm in. And I mean, there is some background vetting. You and I met when I was traveling on the road. I'd known Hillary for a while. So like, it wasn't, I'm just seeing strangers on the internet saying, come on a cruise, build your business. There is a little bit of selling that's happened in the background all this time. Totally. But like y'all said, here's the offer. And I went, yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, and that is my favorite kind of thing to offer. Like when it's something that like, and we wanted it to be just like the easiest yes possible. So Hillary and I hosted a collaboration cruise on a Virgin voyage, and we took like 10 people and we went and talked business for a couple of days and were spoiled rotten on a cruise. Yes. And it was amazing because we knew exactly what we wanted there. We wanted it to be so easy to put on. We wanted all the details taken care of for us. And because like anyone who's been in entrepreneurial circles knows that like at events, the most valuable part about any of those events, and we've kind of talked about this on this call, is what's happening on the sides, those conversations that are happening in the wings. That's where the magic is. So for something like this, like it was like Disneyland on a boat. I mean, I guess they have that already, but.
That's true. It was better, honestly, at the risk of sounding like an angry old auntie. No kids. That was great.
Yeah, it was.
The Seaview Terrace, I literally slept one night in the hammock out there on the sea, lest this devolve into a commercial for Virgin Cruises. Hey, Richard, call me. I loved that experience. It was such a good refresher on and gave me so much perspective and introduced me to so many cool people. Like, I don't know where I'm going with that tangent either, but like just letting you know if Dusty or I offers some sort of experiential thing to work on your business, I think you should jump on it because it's usually pretty fun. So there was another thing. Actually, this kind of ties into what I was saying with the boat. Sometimes you got to just say yes and figure shit out. And that sounds like exactly what you have done for most of your career. Can you speak to that a little more?
Oh man. Yeah. God, when I only read Year of Yes like 2 years ago. And as soon as I did, I was like, oh, me and Shanta, man, like I am feeling this. And she's got like other stuff going on for sure in that book. But that idea of actively choosing to put your biases aside and not your preferences necessarily, but like your preconceived notions, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Putting the preconceived notions aside and trying more things. So like that year after that breakup, I was like, okay, I've been a serial monogamous my whole life. I have to learn how to date. So I'm a doofus. So I decided to turn it into a challenge. And it's a half-written book on my hard drive right now. And I was going to do 52 dates in 52 weeks. And that's how I was going to stay single, how I was going to learn to date. And like, we'll just figure it out. It'd be a fun little writing project to do on the side while I'm running a business and raising children and doing all the other shit that I was doing. What a good idea. And then I realized I was a hot girl on the internet and I did way more than 52 dates because I thought it was hilarious. But oh God, that year though, like by the time I had gotten to like the next May, so I'd almost completed my year and I had said yes to all sorts of people, for dates and stuff who I wouldn't have given a second consideration to before. And generally speaking, what I found was like, my instincts are good. I didn't need to do those things. But one of the last ones that I said yes to was this guy who I had seen in a bar the year before. And we had all ended up at the same table because we had a mutual friend and I was still dating fuckboy at the time. And we were all, hanging out. It's karaoke bar. You get it. And this dude, like at one point throws his arm around my waist. It was like, woo. And my boyfriend got all like, ah, and like marched us out. I'm like, whatever. So when he showed up on Tinder, I was like, oh, boyfriend would have hated this. Swipe right. Let's go. So we hung out for like 6 weeks and had a great time. He was super, super cool. And he took me to this 4th of July party and I met all of my people, including my future husband there. And so like, it was just like, as soon as I'd walked in that room, I was like, I already knew that like our shelf life had pretty much run its course, but we were still kind of hanging out and having a nice time. But as soon as I walked in that room, I was like, okay, I have to figure out how to make sure that he can't get rid of me. So I have to make friends with all of the women in this room right now. And up marches this girl and she sticks out her hand. She's like, hi, I'm Kirsten, like Bierston. And next weekend, I am running her bachelorette party and the two of them are getting married.
Nice.
So it was, everything works out in the end. She's still Bierston in my phone. And Brad's not so bad either. I got his big dumb face on a giant stick and we're going to make it a totem for marching around New York so we don't lose any of our party.
That is fantastic. Yes. See, sometimes things are happening for you, even when it seems like everything is falling apart and it's not going the way that you want. And that doesn't even sound like a falling apart story. That sounds like a falling together story. But so often we get fixated on like, this is not going the way I want it. Like you could have easily taken another mindset to that of like, oh, another guy that's only lasting like 6 weeks. I know I said 52 dates in 52 weeks, but like, what is wrong with me that this is not working? And you didn't take that tactic and it worked out. So like faith in yourself, my darlings. If you're in that rough growth stage, if you are under $50,000 a year and you're like, what the fuck? Get a job. It's okay. Or don't get a job. It's okay. If you're in the 5 million plus range, get a Dusty. Don't get a Dusty. Figure stuff out. It's okay. You can say yes. You can do the damn thing. Welcome to this bizarre wild ride of entrepreneurship, where we can do whatever the fuck we want. Permission to kick ass granted.
Amen.
That feels like the perfect spot to just like wrap on. So tell us a little bit more about you and your business. Thank you for being such an incredible guest. Where can we learn more?
Totally. So you can come learn more about me and what I do at thereinvention.co. I also have a podcast called Referral Worthy. You can find it on the same site and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. It is mostly focused on building a referral worthy business and everything that goes into that. So those are the two things. I am going to seed that I am going to be running another business making retreat here. It's not until April of 2025. I'm going to be taking a group of women to France. And if anyone's interested in joining me, we're in the preliminary planning stages. So now's a good time to reach out.
Nice, nice. I was like, well, of course we're staring into cameras right now, but I'm like, she's making pointed eye contact at me. We're going to do this. Thank you so much for being with us on the show. This is incredible. I'm glad I got to see your face, and thank you. That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick-Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.